Hello, guys, and welcome to today's WCG Investments webinar. We're calling it the Shelter from the Storm, Why Mobile Home Parks Are a Safe Haven in Uncertain Economies. I'm Vinny, and I'm here with my partners, Tim and Matthias. So many investors are looking for strategies that not only weather the economic downturn, but actually protect and grow wealth in the process. So today we'll be diving into why mobile home parks continue to outperform during challenging market cycles and what makes them uniquely recession resistant. So let's get started. Matthias, why do you believe mobile home parks stand out as a recession resistant asset class, especially when you compare it to other forms of real estate like multifamily?
Sure. I think the main reason is it's just affordable housing. So in a downturn, people, there's never not a need or no demand for like affordable housing. Somebody needs a roof over their head. It's a very one of those basic needs that everybody has is housing. And we really on the bottom of affordable housing. We really like one step before homelessness. So somebody always moves into a mobile home park if things get tough. So people looking for the most cost-effective option, and mobile home parks shine in that category for sure. So compared to like multifamily or like apartments and stuff like that, we are a fraction of their costs and their rents, right? So sometimes like a third of it or a fourth in some markets. So there's always people that are going to be able to afford that or need to afford at least that level of housing with mobile home parks. So that's why I believe it's like super recession resistant.
Absolutely. And that's why we focus on making sure that these places are nice, clean, a place where it can be proud to live in, right? So, yeah, good call. Tim, how have mobile home parks historically performed during past economic downturns, let's say 2008, or even during COVID?
So, this is one of the great things I really love about them. Why we call them recession resistant is because when there's downturns, we are not hit nearly as hard as some of the other asset classes. I know, from reading from the '08 crisis. I mean, the historically, there wasn't a whole lot of change. There's probably, not probably, there's some more, more late payments, more having to really tighten up operations. You can't let people slip in hard times, because letting people slip is, even though it sounds nice, oh, okay, you can pay late or whatever, it really ends up harming tenants in the long run, because then they can't get caught up. You got to evict them and all that crazy stuff. And then what's cool, I mean, during COVID, I had my first park, and there was no noticeable difference in payment. So, when all the world was going crazy, people still need a place to live. And, there's a lot of people who are just not paying, oh, ha, 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 there's an eviction moratorium, we'll have to pay. All of my tenants knew that, first we have month-to-month leases, so I could have likely non-renewed them. But what I did, I had conversations with people. Anytime someone asked, can I just not pay, eviction moratorium, blah, 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 it would be, well, you might be able to not pay, but just know that as soon as that eviction moratorium is lifted, that we're going to file eviction and we're going to get you out of there, because that doesn't make sense. And I mean, they knew that they had a great thing. They knew that they had the most affordable housing in the area, so they didn't want to jeopardize it. So what I've learned is a lot of headache you can get in front of it with communication, the conversation, with how can we make this work so we don't have to go to those eviction processes. And I love mobile home parks because it really is, it's you can just have that conversation as hey, I get you're having a hard time, and I get that the world's a little bit crazy, but let's make this work for you. And with a little bit of that personal touch, it really goes a long way in, ensuring that all of our parks stay very, very consistent.
Absolutely. That's good. Matthias, what are some core characteristics of mobile home parks that naturally make them more resilient during economic hardship?
Yes, I think in mobile home parks, the big thing is there's skin in the game with the tenants. The majority of our portfolio people own their home, basically. So that tenant ownership makes a big difference, that they keep paying because they're basically leasing the land from us, so to speak. So, and moving their home is extremely expensive. So it's much cheaper, more affordable for a tenant to pay another $400 or $500 lot rent instead of moving their home for $5,000 or $10,000. Of course, that's financially the best decision to keep paying rent. So they have that skin in the game. And I think that makes a really big difference in anything. Really, psychologically, the skin in the game is really the major difference here, where the tenant ownership is like super important. So Tim and I were at like one of the parks we're purchasing next, and we talked to the property manager that's on site, and they have a lot of turnover there. And the reason why they have turnover is because they don't charge security deposits, which means no skin in the game, and people just get up and leave at midnight. And they have a lot of rentals. They don't have a lot of tenant-owned homes. They have a lot of park-owned homes. So when we hear this, we're like, okay, great. We know exactly how to fix this. Better leasing, sell the homes, making tenant-owned homes, and they become really, really sticky. So you have really sticky communities, and they actually build in that community and that culture within that community very, very quickly. And on top of that, you have really low capex outlay on top of it because you don't own the homes anymore. You actually, enabling somebody to affordable home ownership. In that case, they pay lot rent, which is super affordable. Back to my point I made earlier, which is just a fraction of like renting an apartment, and they own their home. So they don't want to move. It's much cheaper just to keep renting because moving is going to be like 10, 20x of the rent costs. So that's why I love them so much. They're really, really sticky and everybody wins. And, when you have people living in communities 20, 30 years, like we have in one of our communities, there's a lady, she's lived there since 1994, it's like 31 years. She's already living there. So that's beautiful. I love that.
Yeah, absolutely. And you touched on something, right? We learn lessons not from our own experience, but also from somebody else's experience, right? We don't have to go through that particular scenario to learn. We actually implement from other people's experience, which is really good. Tim, can you speak to how the affordability crisis in housing plays into the strength of mobile home parks during the recession?
Yeah, first, I'm surprised that 1994 was 31 years ago. That's crazy.
Hey.
I know. Now I'm feeling old.
Oh, man. Thanks, Tim.
So, yeah, I mean, there's definitely an affordability crisis in America now. And we believe it's just getting worse and worse. And there's definitely need in the marketplace. And, everyone talks about how it's an issue and almost no one does anything about it. And it's so sad and funny at the same time to see. But yeah, when things get bad, I mean, everyone needs a place to live. And at the core of our business, like, yes, we love mobile home parks, but at the core of our business, we're looking to house people in an affordable way. Right now, and for the foreseeable future, that's mobile home parks, because they're so much less expensive on a monthly basis than apartments, than houses. I was listening to a podcast yesterday that Matthias sent me, actually. It was a really good podcast. And they were talking about affordability, and they brought up this stat that it was like owning almost costs double to rent. And I mean, don't quote me on that, but it was a substantial difference, right? And so, if it's too much to own a house, it's too much to rent an apartment. There has to be that third. There has to be, something that is filling that need. That's like a good, safe place to live. We can't just let the people who can't afford either of those first two options to just just go live under a bridge. I mean, come on now. So we're all about, how can we make these communities affordable and sustainable and nice communities for people to live when there's really that crunch, especially in the market right now. People are back and forth on whether or not we're in a recession. And I mean, a lot of people are feeling it. And I see over the next 5 to 10 years, a lot more of the affordability crisis. I'm reading the latest Ray Dalio book, and he's talking about huge debt and what to do, how to position yourself well. And it really helps me to think, how do we position WCG well or anything like that? And that trickles down to, okay, well, how do we position our tenants well? Because when our tenants do well, we do well. So it's very macro. It's not just how does Tim Woodbridge do well? It's no. How does everyone do well? Because that's the only way that we can all work well and whatever happens, succeed. So yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, you want to make it a win-win for everybody,
it has
right?
to be. It has to be. That's the only way it makes sense.
Yeah.
And for better, for worse, it's the only way that I can win. So, if we really go to it, it's the only way that I or we or everyone has to. You can't just let people leave people out to dry. We've talked about also. So we are very heavy into building the company right now, and we are planning to get someone to really focus on what's out there in terms of rental help, because there's short HUD, Section 8, stuff like that. What else is out there? I've had tenants use community outreach, churches will pay rent and stuff like that. So there's all these really cool avenues to help pay rent when people can't. And it's okay, how can we help them? So it continues making the business flow smoothly, and it continues having their lives, that it continues so they can stay in this housing that they need. There's all these really cool opportunities that we're really focusing on leaning on for any inevitable recessions.
Yeah, what I love is that us as WCG investments, we're thinking about those other options, right? We're not saying, okay, look, you can't pay rent. That's too bad for you, or you got to move. No, we're actually thinking about the people, right? The human aspect. You want to be able to take care of them, right? Everybody goes through tough times sometimes, so they need a little help, so we can help them at least find options, right? Good stuff. Matthias, how does the demand versus supply equation look like in this space? And how does that affect performance in economic downturn?
That's definitely in our favor. I mean, supply is basically frozen. And there's some coming online, but cities and municipalities don't like them. It's kind of a paradox, if you will, like Tim just mentioned. We all know affordability is an issue, but then if you actually try to create affordable housing, it's not in my backyard because they don't pay enough taxes. I want to get rid of it. The cities are thinking, or the government is thinking, because the highest and best use for land would be an apartment complex. They pay a lot more taxes than a bunch of mobile homes on the same plot of land. So that makes a big difference, obviously. So, I mean, demand keeps climbing. We need more and more affordable housing, and as things become more and more unaffordable, we are absorbing demand. We are not really fighting oversupply at all, because there's not more coming on the market, which puts us in really strong position. So the position at WCG, I think we're really hitting a sweet spot for future demand and absorbing the future demand really, really strongly. And then it gives a lot of rent stability. Multifamily might have some up and downs, and other asset classes and up and downs. Rents really don't go down on mobile home parks. I mean, they're really, really sticky. Once they hit a certain threshold, they got to stay there and maybe stay there a while. If there's a recession, they might stick there for a year or 2 or 3 years, whatever. Then they go up with inflation. Whereas with apartments, you might go oh, now it's 1,200 and it was 1,300, and it's really, really sticky because supply doesn't really come online anymore. The cities make it so hard to actually develop new mobile home parks, and you need permits and moving homes. It just makes it very complicated, very, very tacky, to tackle those topics. So It just reminds me when I was still manufacturing, when they were pushing like electric vehicles, not becoming political here at all. Politics divide people, but it's always the same thing. Like, the Chinese were building like very, very, cheap electric vehicles. And they were like, oh no, now we put tariffs on this because we want to get rich off that solution, not somebody else. It's not importing those cheap vehicles. All of a sudden, China figured out how to make them really cheaply, but they were not made here. So, oh, not in my backyard, buddy. So it reminds me a lot of that scenario as well. Like, we want to fix this, but I want to get rich while doing it. So that's how I feel like the government's approaching this.
That's right. I keep hearing the term sticky. You hear it a lot with mobile home parks. Tim, what do you think mobile home park tenants tend to be more stable or sticky, if you will, even when the times get rough?
Okay, I just changed mic. Can you guys still hear me okay? A little bit different probably because it's a different mic.
Yeah, sounds better, yeah.
It's a little bit echoey when we are talking. We hear ourselves a little bit on our end, just FYI.
Oh, wait, you hear yourselves when you're talking?
Yeah, a little bit, yeah.
Just a second ago, now it's good.
Okay.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Okay. So, mobile home parks tend to be sticky because they're the most affordable place in town. I mean, it doesn't make sense to go elsewhere as long as we're keeping the communities nice, which we do, and as long as we're not, jacking up the rents and being unreasonable. We can usually go up modestly in rents and have people stay because it is the most affordable place in town. So it's interesting, like it does, Matthias was saying it costs so much to move a home. And if a tenant owns their own home, it usually takes a lot of being a bad landlord for them to move. So like, let's just call it out as it is. If you have a person who owns their own home and they're moving for reasons other than, maybe they want to be by family, maybe they're moving across the country, maybe whatever, right? But if they're physically taking their home and moving it into another park, then you need to really look hard at your operations and what you're doing. Because it's crazy, man. It costs so much, like, so say, your rents are $300, $400 lot rents, and it costs $5,000 to $7,000 to $10,000 to move it, probably another $7,000 to $15,000 plus to like get it set up. Like, how bad do things have to be in your park for someone to just be like, I'm done with this, I'm moving? And we hear about stuff like that, landlords coming in and the lot rent's $300 and they jack it to $800, and it's criminal, really. It's an awful way to do business. It's just, going in with no acknowledgement of the people in the business. And if you're doing that, I mean, you're not gonna succeed, as we've seen with the people who do stuff like that. Anyway, I mean, yeah, it's, as Matthias was saying, we've got tenants who have been in our parks for years and years and years and over a decade. And that's our goal. We go in, we improve things, we increase rents low and slow, and make sure that we're not making an unreasonable amount of hardship for anyone. But yeah, I love that they're so sticky. It makes it so I can sleep so much better. Here's a side note. I was talking to someone recently about marketing. He said, how do you market things? Because, for all the apartment investors, all the RV park investors, all the, people who have a lot of turnover, you have to have a really big like marketing funnel going, in Appfolio and other things. There's things where you can keep your leads and you can't turn that off because there's always that turnover. For us, we don't have to do that. And I love that. Usually when we do have a vacancy, it's okay, let's put a Facebook a post up, oh, we have this home available. And then once we get that filled, we could turn that off. We don't have to continually find new people. We know through like historically through our parks that we run that people are going to be staying for a long time, and it's so much less of a headache because of that.
Yeah, definitely. And you mentioned how we increase the rent slowly. Keep in mind when we buy these parks, the rent's already under market value, right? They're significantly under market. So we're increasing rent slowly to get to that market rent, right? So it's not like the parks are at market and then we still increase the price. That wouldn't make any sense. But let's shift gears a little bit. So Matthias, many investors are looking to protect wealth, right? Not just grow it, but the goal is to protect wealth. How do mobile home parks serve as a defensive asset in a volatile market?
Yeah, it's pretty straightforward, really. I mean, the rents are really low, as low as they can be for renting a place in this country, right? So we're one step before homelessness, really. There's nothing cheaper out there in mobile home parks. So always somebody's going to move to the mobile home park. Again, we mentioned it before in this webinar a couple of times. You know, tenants don't want to move, and if somebody moves, it's really because they have personal reasons, like moving across the country, close to the family, or really a bad landlord. Otherwise, people don't move. You know, we have, that's the one situation we have with that one person living there for 31 years is really just a testament of that. They don't want to move. So we have really predictable operating expenses, right? People stay there forever. We don't have huge turnover. Turnover is super low, extremely low. I think the lowest really in any asset class. Maybe my triple net might be competing with us because they stay long terms, like 5, 10 plus years. But that's a different asset class altogether, right? But like in this small niche of, you want to call mobile home parks a niche of multifamily, like I think it just blows it out of the water very, really easily. And in downturns, we don't really have a race downhill, like the luxury class A apartments, class B apartments that try to catch, with concessions, any tenants I can get to keep occupancy up. You have to do free rents here, free rents that. And we just hold rents as they are because they're the cheapest in town with the best deal in town. It's a good place to be in. I always like to compare like mobile home parks like a submarine in the ocean and during a bad hurricane. Like if you're like, I don't know, a couple feet underwater, you don't really feel anything. And that's how this mobile home parks are to me. They're just like underwater, sheltered, and there's a storm above. It doesn't really matter because you're protected by the ocean. That's where we are. We're just in this submarine floating, stable, low and steady eddy, just going along and just wait until the storm settles and then we can grow again. So it's a really good defense mechanism. We're defending really the downside. We don't really chasing the upside, if that makes sense. We're building ourselves with like a good value add, like when we buy a park that needs like infrastructure improvements, it's under market rents, we're building the upside there. We basically bring it to like where it's supposed to be, the highest and best use as a mobile home park, right? But from there, we're just defending upside. Like it's a really strong backstop, if you will, for investors.
I really love the submarine analogy. I'm thinking we should change the WCG Investments logo to submarine. What do you guys think?
There you go.
Love it. Yeah, love it. Let's do it.
Oh, man. So, Matthias, from a cash flow standpoint, how do mobile home parks help buffer against inflation or market turbulence?
Yeah, back to my point earlier I made, they're really sticky rents. They don't really go down necessarily. So the cash was really protected from that end. And you have low turnover. Like turnover really suffocates any deal. Like vacancy, that can kill a really good deal really, really quickly. So if you have a deal like in my apartments, I know I'm picking on apartments a lot, but I just love to compare them. I own both. So I can speak from experience. Like it's always much harder to manage the apartments. There's a lot more turnover. People move into apartments with the knowledge they're going to move one day because they're not going to live there forever. Of course, there's exceptions to the rule, but people don't want to live in an apartment for 20, 30 years. But if somebody buys a mobile home, they're going to stay there for a long time. So low turnover, the operating costs are really low. And then even if we have to increase like lot rents, the bumps are like $25, $50 at a time. It's very, very affordable and really easy to swallow, really. But for us, since the operating expenses are really predictable, that bump when you have 100, 200 units, that's a lot of extra income, which we can, flow to the investors, obviously, and give them more returns. So the cash was super consistent and predictable. Like Tim Tim said earlier, like throughout COVID, I mean, you barely had any like delinquency issues at all. You know, some people were like, "Oh, great, there's this moratorium. I don't have to pay right now." In mobile homes, you know, they're hardworking blue collar people mostly live in those mobile home parks. You know, they have a lot of integrity. They're hardworking people, and they understand, you know, this needs to be paid. You know, and they really stand up to that, which is awesome. So keeping something like over 90% occupancy, 95% occupancy is not that difficult if you're a decent landlord. It's not that hard to be above average nowadays anymore in anything. So especially being a landlord, there's a lot of bad landlords out there, and we definitely pride ourselves to be one of the good ones. That's for sure. And that consistency really rides out all the market chaos, really, because it's really consistent. And then, yeah, again, cheapest deal in town helps a lot with the cash flow.
Absolutely. Tim, let's talk about depreciation and tax strategy. How can mobile home parks be used to preserve investor capital during a downturn?
Sure. First, I want to touch a little bit on market turbulence, because as Matthias was talking, I remember this this thing. So before I quit my last nursing job, I remember I had a mobile home park, and I don't remember exactly what happened, but something happened in the markets where all of my coworkers were like, "Oh shoot, like, I'm looking at my 401k, and like I just lost whatever value, I don't know, thousands of dollars, 10, 20%, whatever it was." And sure, the markets go up and down. It wasn't like, okay, it's never going to be back up. But I didn't even look at my 401k. I didn't have to, because I knew, like, okay, well, this isn't all I have. I have this cash flowing asset that when the market is good, when the market's bad, it's going to be consistent. It's still going to be cash flowing. So I don't have to, oh shoot, let me reach for my phone and look at my balance and like stress about, all these unrealized losses or unrealized gains or whatever. I don't have to do that. I can look at, okay, look, this is cash flowing well. This is how this asset's doing. I don't have to stress about things that I can't control. So yeah, that was a funny side note I just thought of. Depreciation in mobile home parks. We get the best depreciation of any, just about any real estate asset. So we're able to save our investors a ton of money. The thing that really comes to mind, I mean, in Whispering Pines, we have a 74 cents for every dollar invested projected depreciation year one, so it's saving people a ton of money. So, for all the people who have have this big like tax burden, it's a good way to offset all those taxes and, basically not pay the taxes legally while preserving your wealth and continuing to cash flow and grow your wealth. But yeah, our good friends at Madison Specs, they do such a great job in breaking down everything into like what can be deducted in year one. And what's interesting, so the 74 cents for every dollar invested, that was before things are potentially going to 100% bonus depreciation. So, we're always very conservative and like, okay, this is what you can reasonably expect to get. And I know Eden and the team over there, they're pretty conservative. They're, in my experience, they've always been able to get more than what their projections are. So yeah, we don't say, okay, this is what it's going to be at 100% bonus depreciation, because we don't know. I mean, sure, people can say things are going to be one way. People can say they're going to be another way, but we only deal with reality right now. Same with interest rates. Sure, maybe there's going to be a cut, maybe there's not. I don't know. We can deal with what we have today, and we can project things conservatively and reasonably. This is what you're going to get from, from your cash flow. This is what you're going to get from appreciation. This is what you're going to get in tax savings, reasonably, conservatively. We very much like to underpromise and overdeliver. That's a big motto we have in our company.
Yes, we should put that under the submarine. Boom.
Yeah. It's going to be a really, really long, like, I don't know if we can put it on the WCG Instagram. It's going to be too much.
Boom.
You need like a submarine going through the picture now in the
Yeah.
later editing.
Roel,
Yeah, I can make that video.
submarine. Oh man. So Tim, I know you touched on a couple of examples. But can you share a story from our portfolio where a mobile home park outperformed during a challenging economic period, again, like COVID?
Yeah, so like that first park I had when COVID hit, I didn't notice any crazy differences. Sure, some people paid late, but some people always paid late. It was the same people, right? And but like there wasn't any noticeable difference in the performance of the asset compared like before and after. Um, and I also had an apartment we just sold. And it was interesting to see the difference in those asset classes because there was no ownership. People really didn't care. They would just leave in the middle of the night sometimes, or they would leave, give notice, and then all of a sudden it's a wrecked property and you have $5, $10, $15,000 worth of damage that you got to go in. And so, people talk about cash flow. I just want to let you know right now, apartments aren't where the cash flow is. They just don't. Based on market conditions, apartments, not every apartment, but most apartments are not cash flowing. And so that's where our advantage comes in. Our assets cash flow generally, really from day one. We don't do super heavy lifts. We don't do bridge debt. We're low and slow. So we make sure that they're cash flowing for everyone from day one. And it was interesting to me to see the difference between the apartments and the mobile home parks. And I'm very grateful that I was a part of the apartment deal because it taught me that I don't want to do apartments. Like mobile home parks, it just makes so much more sense than apartment buildings. At least, for the moment. Market conditions change, but right now, and for the predictable future, affordable housing is where it's at and where we have positioned ourselves to be in that place to provide the need to people.
Yeah,
Provide the answer to the need. That's the way I wanted to say that.
I got to tell you, that's the reason why I became a sticky investor with mobile home parks, because they cash flow day one, right? When we close a deal, investors usually get distributions quarter two, right after closing, which is pretty awesome. A lot of times with apartments, you have to wait to rehab them, and you may not see money for like a year or two, right? So that is one of the things that made me stay with mobile parks. I really do like that, and when I talk to investors, that's something that really jumps out. So Matthias, let's talk about operations. How does operational efficiency, like shared vendors or experienced community managers, enhance performance during an economic stress?
Yeah, mainly it's business as usual, really, because if you have the process and systems in place during a downturn, it shouldn't really impact your operations too much, especially when there's an economic downturn. The people already working for you, they're probably glad they're working for you because they have a job and they have something to do, obviously. So if you keep them happy, treat them well, I think it's business as usual. What we really love to do is really, double down on good markets. So we're buying a lot in South Carolina, where we are based out of. We just been at the property in Sumter, South Carolina. We are closing on next, and we have a park there ready. We're buying 3 more right now. We're making offers on several more. So we're kind of taking that secondary market over down there in Sumter, South Carolina. But what really helps there is really like we have now several parks that can be paved at the same time. That gives you economy of scale. You can go to a paving company and say, hey, I need 2 or 3 parks paved. Give me a great price, because now they're just not going to do 1 job, do 3 jobs. Same with a handyman. If you have a handyman and you have like a community manager, you can pay them a lot more if you have a lot of income coming in from different properties at the same time, 3 to 4 properties in that case. But overall, for the individual deals, it's very low cost. If you have a third-party property management company, I would charge you 10, up to 15% because log rents are, the rents are lower than compared to apartments if you have third-party management. But we have in-house management, so we decide how we pay our people and how they're getting paid. So the more scale you have in a certain market, the more you can pay them, which means, again, they're stickier. Your vendors are stickier because you treat them well, you pay them well. But overall, for the deal, on the deal level, it's actually really low cost. So we actually operate like under 10% management costs if you have a lot of scale in the same region. So that helps a lot. And you cross-training managers as well. So if we get the new Sumter deal now online end of this month, they know exactly what to do. It's like, here, this is the address. There's 74 more tenants. If they're behind, you know exactly what to do on rent payments, on delinquency. And it's just business as usual. The leasing is the same process. Everything's the same process. It's the same town and everything. It's the same courthouse they're going to. It helps a lot. That's why we like to double down and in good markets. And if we see an opportunity there, be very aggressive. But making sure our North Star is, to double our investors' money, give them major tax benefits and cash flow from day one. So it hits all those factors in our markets. Man, we lean in hard. We love that stuff.
Yeah, for sure. And that's a way to minimize risk as well, right?
Yeah.
So, Tim, what are some mistakes to avoid when entering the mobile home park space during a recession?
Good question. You definitely want to stay away from short-term financing, anything with adjustable rate mortgages. I mean, that's, I was talking with Chaim recently, our loan broker, and I was like, what, our partner and loan broker. I was like, what can we do? Like, what's longer term? Because right now, all of our loans, it's a 5-year term, 30-year AM, but like a 5-year term. And it's pretty standard. And I was like, okay, what can we do longer? Can we do 7 years? Can we do 10 years? If there's anything crazy that happens, I want to make sure that we are well positioned to weather any storm. And so yeah, stay away from those short-term things. Stay away from super heavy value add, because maybe you can value add, but if you can't, you're going to be underwater. And then yeah, just make sure that you're working with proven operators, people who have done it before. There's nothing crazy in terms of what we do. There's nothing that we do that other people can't do. The difference is we have done it consistently over and over and over again. So, sure, anyone can do it, but like, you have to be willing to put the time and effort and the willingness to learn into it. And we've done that before, and we continue to do that. And so that our big advantage is that we have the experience. So yeah, if y'all are looking to place your capital into mobile home parks or any asset, really vet the operators. Who's doing it? What's their experience? I heard another podcast recently where there was a guy who he blew up. He went from nothing to like 2,000 units in an apartment, right? And he got the trust of all these people that he could really pull off these things. And what he ended up doing is he didn't have the experience. So he thought he could do it, but he ended up, trying to run it all himself, sort of thing. And I get it. I've done it before. I get the mindset of like, oh, I can do this. But he didn't have the experience to know he can't do it. That's too much for one person. That's too much. So, we've gone through it. We've developed the teams. We have the amazing people in the right seats. So yeah, if y'all are placing capital, make sure you're vetting the operators.
Experience is huge. I know we have a long list of lessons learned, right? Because we have seen a thing or two. And then if we see it again, we know how to execute, right? So yeah, experience is huge. So Tim, if an investor is sitting on the sidelines right now, what would you say to someone who's nervous about investing during a downturn?
So in a downturn, everyone is worried. Everyone wants to shore up capital, and they think that's the right thing to do. And it's like a natural inclination, oh, I've got to have all this money on the sidelines because what if? And the thing that they don't realize is now and during downturns is probably the best time to invest, because you're going to be getting the best deals. You're going, you're going to be getting a hold of it's your buy low, sell high sort of thing, right? So, you want to put your money to work when it's scary, even though it's scary. It's accept that it's scary, accept that you're like, oh my gosh, what if I need this capital for something else? I'd say make sure you have, 6 months or so of reserves, and then everything else put to work for you in something that is very recession resistant, that cash flows, that even if the market turns, even if the dollar gets really, really soft, even if all this crazy stuff happens, you still have this nice wealth preservation strategy with your capital in, as part ownership of this really good, stable asset. It's something that's like, it messes with your head, because it messes with my head too. You want to hold on to all your money as if you think that's the safest thing to do. And then all of a sudden, again, the dollar softens, and that $100,000 that you had is now worth, $85,000, $90,000. And it's really the smartest thing to do is to invest when there's a downturn.
There's this famous quote from Warren Buffett, right? Be fearful when others are greedy, and be greedy when others are fearful. That's basically what it is. That's where the wealth transfers. That's really the time to attack, when it's really, there's a lot of turbulence out there. I love to invest in those times myself. Everybody's scared.
Yeah, agreed. So Matthias, what's the biggest misconception about mobile home parks as an investment in a bad economy?
Yeah, it's probably because it's like the low-end risky asset class everybody's thinking, because it's low rent, there must be low-quality tenants, which is not the case. Because again, people own their homes, and they pay $400 lock rent, they're protected. They have really proud of ownership of that home. They don't want to move it for financial reasons, and they are love those sticky communities. There's a lot of people that live in there for multi-years, multi-decades, and they're building like a community. They don't want to leave it. So I think there's many people thinking low rents equals low quality tenants. It's similar to like Section 8 has a bad rep as well. There's good Section 8 tenants, there's bad Section 8 tenants. There's also very good mobile home tenants. There's also very bad mobile home tenants. Ultimately, as the park owner like us and the operator, we are responsible who we let into our park, and that builds the culture, right? So ultimately, you need to really vet the operator and make sure they're letting the right people into the park, because just because mobile homes and they're a safe investment doesn't mean they all have like great tenants in them. Many times we have to clean house when we take over mobile home parks have been mismanaged, and we have to evict a lot of people because they shouldn't have been there in the first place. Some landlords just putting people in there just because they have a pulse, but they don't do any like background check and credit check. Evictions, they don't check anything. They're just like, oh yeah, this person makes some money and they're breathing, let's put it into a mobile home. They can pay $400 or $800 if they rent a home out, whatever. I think it's ultimately like vet the operator, go through their parks. I'm always welcoming our investors, go drive through our parks and see how they look like and how clean they are. One of our first initiatives, if we take parks over, is like cleanup. Like everybody's cleaning up their yards immediately, neatly stack everything, whatever you have. And then if you don't adhere to it, you have like a 30-day grace period, we start finding you, and that builds that culture. It's like, if you walk into like a nice house, you're like immediately take your shoes off. It's like, oh, I don't want to, put my dirty shoes on this carpet, but if it's like all messed up, you don't even think about it. If somebody's house really messy, same thing, you have always just one chance for the first impression. So I think that makes it very much like a safe investment, even like in bad economies. And I think the big misconception just comes from like, because it's low rents, but high rent doesn't mean you have a safe investment either. I think it's actually the opposite.
All right, so this is going to be the last question for today. But Tim, if you had to boil it down, what are the top 3 reasons mobile home parks should be on every investor's radar right now?
So the big one, the really big one, is wealth preservation. You've worked hard to make a ton of money, and you might be worried that who knows what's going to happen in the market. The stocks are up and down, the dollar's up and down, we can look towards the future to try to predict. But the biggest reason is that wealth preservation in uncertain times. Other than that, these are cash flowing assets. They provide quarterly distributions to investors. They are very safe and stable, the way we run them. And then, on top of all of that, you get great year one tax benefits through, depreciation and advanced depreciation. Just it's saving actual dollars, like I can get nerdy and talk about depreciation, but like, what does that mean? It means that you are paying less money in taxes. I saw something for a post from my friend Mason, and he does commercial real estate, and it was a screenshot of one of his investors, and it was from the IRS, and it said, you are getting a tax return of, it was like 14 grand. So, it's real money. It's not just like, oh, hypothetically, I'm going to save. It's like, no, dude, you paid this, and this is how you're going to offset all these taxes. It's it's so cool. It's definitely like magic in a way, but it's using the laws in your favor to make it so, okay, how can I pay less of what I've earned, what I've worked hard to earn. So it's definitely a smart investment for so many people. And we just got our K1s done, and I have to go through, like, a note to myself is to go through the projected versus actual, like, cost savings, because so far they've beat everything. Our projected was this, and it's a little bit higher. You saved a little bit more. So, all of that equals real dollars that people are saving. So it's just another tool in the tool belt to continue to preserve your wealth.
I love it. And as I'm listening to you, I think about helping, right? It comes down to helping people, and it feels good to help investors save on taxes. It feels good to help tenants live in a nice, affordable place, right? So, yeah, I love it. All right, so before we wrap it up, I just want to say thank you again for joining us today. We know there are a lot of other places that you could be investing your time and attention. So we are grateful you chose to spend some time with us today. And as you heard Tim and Matthias, mobile home parks are a proven recession-resilient investment backed by real demand, strong fundamentals, and the kind of cash flow that holds up even when the market doesn't really hold up. So if today sparked your interest or raised questions about how this fits into your investment strategy, reach out, ask questions, and let's continue the conversation. So thanks again for being a part of the WCG Investments community, and we look forward to connecting with you soon. Have a good day.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.